Hello and welcome to the Savage Stream. I am your host, Charisse, the Sci-Fi Savage, and today we are going to be talking about the top 10 best episodes of Star Trek Voyager. Now, just to be clear, Star Trek Voyager is one of my favorite Star Trek series. It's actually like my tippy top favorite. But I will say I haven't seen all of them, so that might change. It hasn't changed for 30 years, but it might change. So that being said, it was really, really hard to pick a top 10. Really, almost every single episode that I watch is my favorite episode, with the exception of the Lizard episode, which I never want to see or hear about again, and the Tuvix episode, which I also really don't like. So there's just a handful of episodes I don't like, but all the rest I really, really enjoy. But I was able to try my hardest to come up with 10 episodes that I think are excellent and a great kind of just a little spattering of what you can expect from this show. So if you've never seen Star Trek Voyager, or if you haven't watched it all the way through because you're not sure if it's for you, this will give you a little idea of what to expect. Now, it is episodic, so you can kind of jump in anywhere and be just fine. There are a few storylines that go over the course of a whole season, but it'll catch you up on anything you've missed. So I highly recommend Voyager. It's kind of like the action-packed version of TNG. So with no further ado, let's get started. So episode number 10 on the list is the episode called Critical Care. And this is season 7, episode 5. And this is when the doctor gets kidnapped and he's forced to work in a hospital, but he's forced to work on only the most wealthy, privileged patients, giving them care and treatment that they don't need, while at the same time, he's fully aware of the critical care unit where people are just dying left and right of completely treatable diseases. So I picked this episode for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's really interesting to see that there is a disharmony still existing in the 24th century. You know, one of the things that Gene Roddenberry wanted to do in creating the Star Trek universe is he wants to create this world that's a utopia, right? Where there's no problems, no worries. There's no such thing as scarcity. There's abundance in everything. People have equal access to healthcare and food and everything they need. Hi, Carol from Toronto. So good to see you. In wanting that, which is a beautiful thing to want, but in wanting that, it's not really realistic for a couple of reasons. One is that I fully believe whenever you have people, you're going to have problems, because people bring the problems. So as long as humans are involved, it's probably not going to be utopia. But two, just for storytelling purposes, drama is what makes a story good. So if we have this perfect utopia, there's no story. There's nothing really we want to see that, does this get resolved, or do people get their goal, because there's no problems, right? So usually what Star Trek does is it gives another culture, another species, some planet that's not in the Federation, it gives them the problem so that the Federation can come in and be the saviors and, save the day and say, be more like us, and then you won't have problems. So what I really like about this episode, even though it follows that same model of like, we're perfect, you're not, we're going to come fix you, is I just appreciate the fact that it's showing that classism is a thing, even in the future, even with alien species, because as long as you have people, you're going to have hierarchies, you're going to have cliques. Like, that's just human nature. So I appreciate this episode for that reason. In addition, what's really cool in this episode is that the doctor befriends this young boy who's a patient at the hospital. Carol, I know you just joined. This is the episode Critical Care on Voyager. That's season 7, episode 5. And for anyone else who's joining live, hello. And anyone who's watching on the replay, hello. So what I love about this episode is that he bonds with this young patient who has this lethal condition, which is completely treatable. And this young patient wants to be a doctor. And so he knows all this stuff about medicine, and he kind of becomes the doctor's right-hand person, helping him with diagnoses and just doing different odds and ends around the hospital while he's there for treatment. So the doctor is like, wow, if you want to be a doctor, you can totally be a doctor, and let me help you and mentor you and all these things. And he's like, I can't be a doctor. I have to be a sanitation worker because that's what my dad is. So that's what I have to be. And I can never move in society. And the doctor's like, who says? And he's like, I forget the name of the governing body, but whatever the governing body is, it's like, oh, the whatever says no one can move. Everyone has to stay exactly where they are. So you come to find out that this governing body, which is kind of this mysterious, what we think is an AI throughout the episode, some kind of mysterious AI that brought peace and harmony to this world, this planet that was dying. And so everybody trusts it because the planet was on its last leg. This AI came in and rearranged everything, and now the planet is thriving. at least parts of the planet are thriving. So people are like, we don't question the AI, we just trust whatever it says. Come to find out that the head of the hospital is the AI, right? He's not an AI at all. He's just blaming everything on the AI. He's the one who set up this classist system, and he's the one who wants it to go the way it is. He even tells the doctor, your time is better spent with our wealthy, privileged patients, giving them treatments that they don't need, because they're more important to society. And the doctor is like, says who? And he's like, says the AI, like they're more important because they're wealthier. Well, what he decides to do was take this lethal disease that this kid had and infect this guy with it. So then when this guy goes to the scanner, he's like, and he tells him, like, I just injected you. You've got however many hours to live. And when he goes through the scanner, he's like, you give me treatment right now. He's like, I can't. Sorry, because you're like at this lower level. He gives him the same level that that kid had. And that kid, by the way, does pass away from this totally treatable disease. So he gives him that same, like the same antigens as that kid so that the hospital AI reads him as that kid. And so he's like, sorry, I can't give you any treatment for this condition because you don't have a high enough clearance level. And the guy is like, please, please, I'm going to die. You can't do this. You have to help me and all this stuff. And he's like, no, not until you agree that every patient here who has this treatable, lethal condition gets treated. If you don't agree to that, then you don't get treated either. But if you do agree, they all get treated and you get treated. So the guy grudgingly is like, fine, you can treat all the dying patients then. So the doctor is successful. He saves the day. He's able to get everybody treated, including this head of the hospital pretending to be the AI, kind of a deal. And like just at that moment, right when he's basically blackmailing this guy, Voyager comes and finds the doctor and is like, we're here to rescue you. Come back with, and he's like, 1 second, let me finish this business. Finishes it, make sure everybody gets their treatments, and then he goes off to Voyager. So he's talking to 7 and 9 about it later on, and he says, I think I need a checkup. Like, I think there's something wrong with my program. And she's like, why would you think that? And he kind of tells her, like, I injected somebody with a lethal condition. And she's like, on purpose? And he's like, yeah, on purpose. And so he has this conflict. Do two wrongs make a right? Because what he did was absolutely wrong. You don't just go around injecting people with lethal diseases, but he did it to save hundreds of lives. Maybe not hundreds. I think there was dozens in the hospital that had this condition, but he did it to save lives, basically. So he threatened one life to save a bunch of other lives and maybe lives in the future. Who knows? So the question, like the moral of the story or the question of this episode is, do two wrongs make a right? Is it okay to threaten one person's life to save other people's lives? And the way the episode goes, you're like, absolutely. You know, the way the episode is, you're like, that's absolutely right. And that's what that guy deserved. And he deserved much worse. But it's just an interesting idea, because then the question is, well, how many wrongs until it's just wrong? Right. And so I don't know. But I love stuff like that. This is why I love Star Trek. This is why I love Star Trek. I love the kind of the way you think differently about your choices, about society, about where people fit, about what's right and what's wrong. Like, I love that part. Don't get me wrong. I love a good space battle too. Love good alien makeup. Love costumes and sets that are amazing. But I think it's that kind of deeper questioning of self and of society that is so valuable. And I think that's really why this show has stood the test of time. Okay. Episode number 9 on the list is an episode called Prototype. And this is season 2, episode 13. This is the episode where B'Elanna finds this robot floating in space. And when she's trying to kind of help the robot, they give it some plasma. Her and Harry Kim figure out how to kind of revive it because it's alive, but its energy levels are very low. And she's like, if it loses all power altogether, we may never be able to restart this thing. And it could, die in a sense, but it's a robot. So, you know what I mean? It could power down and never power back up. So they figure it out. They crack the code. They bring it back to life. Unfortunately, it has robot amnesia. So it doesn't know what was going on, who it is, but it knows that what she just did was really special. And as the episode goes along and she learns more about this robot, more of its memories start coming back. And it at one point remembers who it is and then kidnaps her to its ship. And I think the Voyager was trying to return it to its people or something like that. But when its ship comes to take it, it takes B'Elanna as well. So it turns out that there's a whole bunch of robots. There's like Robot Series A and Robot Series B, and they're the same exact robot, but they're slightly different colors or something like that. Maybe they're gold and white or something like that. But anyways, this robot series that he's a part of, he says their units are failing and they're not able to bring them back the way B'Elanna did. So it kidnapped her in order to restore all the other robots that have been like falling apart. so that it can keep doing whatever its job is. And so she's like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Plus, you kidnapped me. So, no. And so he goes, well, I know you're a good person and I want to be your friend. But look, these other robots don't know you at all. So, if you don't do this, the other option is we're going to space you. And she's like, well, shoot, in that case, bring on the robots. So, she works on the robots. And with all this trial and error, she figures out that each and every robot has a very unique, some unique, not code, but some unique aspect to it that it cannot survive without this piece. And also, the pieces are not replaceable. So while every part of the robot is replaceable, this critical piece that makes the robot come to life is not replaceable. You can't just take it from one robot and put it in another. And that was done intentionally so that the makers, which are the people who created these robots, could have control over the robots. They didn't want the robots to be able to recreate themselves unlimitedly forever. So she designs kind of a universal module that they can replicate, that can go in all of their robots, so that all the robots can live and they don't need this special piece. So he's like, hooray, you've saved the day, you've got the, and she figures it out right at the last second, and she brings this prototype, one of the robots back to life using this universal module. And so the robot comes alive and it's like, what is my programming? Like, tell me what to do. And she's looking down at it and she's like, I did it. I've created life. And she's so excited. But then she digs a little deeper into the robot who kidnapped her and is asking, why did you, like, do you remember your function? Do you remember your purpose? And he's like, oh yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I remember all of it now. So she's like, what happened? Well, it turns out that Robot Series A and Robot Series B were both part of a war. So Planet A and Planet B went to war. They both created the same exact type of robot, but again, they looked a little different. And instead of the people on the planets fighting in the war, they created robots to fight in the war. So the idea was whichever robot fleet wins, that planet wins. But basically, it was a way to spare their own lives. So the robots were fighting this war. But while the robots were fighting, the people on these two planets decided they didn't want to go to war anymore. And they came to a peace treaty. And who knows how many years of like violence this was. But at some point, they came to a peace treaty. They said, all right, we're cool. We don't need to fight anymore. So let's shut the robots down, because their only function was to fight. So let's shut the robots down. We can be at peace. Well, the robots were programmed to attack anything that is a threat. And specifically, they were originally programmed to see each other as a threat. But as soon as the makers tried to shut them down, the makers became a threat. So the robots on both sides turned on the makers and destroyed all of them, every last one. So now this war is continuing on forever between robots A and robots B. These robots, every time they find each other in space, they just start fighting and fighting and fighting to try to destroy one another. And because they all have that unique piece, once the robots fall apart, they can't make new ones and they can't bring them back. So eventually, all the robots will wear down to the point where the war is actually over, but it could take hundreds of years. And I think they've already been fighting for hundreds of years for no reason. So when B'Elanna learns this, that they destroyed all the makers and that this is just going to start the war. Well, the war's never ended, but it's going to make sure that it never does end if she does create this universal piece that they can, or if she gives them the universal piece. So she looks down at the prototype that she just created. She just gave life, and she takes some sharp pipe or something and smashes it right through that universal piece and basically destroys the robot, like in front of her. Not the robot who kidnapped her, but the one she's been working on. And of course, they're like, what have you done? Oh, we're going to destroy you or whatever. But just then Voyager swoops in, beams her out to safety. And as they're going away, the ship's obviously chasing them to try to get B'Elanna back. But another of the enemy robot ships comes at that same time. And then they like go to war with each other. And Janeway's like, hopefully they're too busy with each other to worry about us, which is exactly what happened. So they fought amongst themselves and Voyager just kind of tiptoed away. Now, here's why I picked this episode as one of the top episodes, because I've been thinking a lot about AI and is AI alive or not alive? Like, how do we consider life and all of these things? I'm reading this book called Infinity Gate. And there's this idea of like artificial intelligence. In the book, there's like a planet of robots and all the robots are sentient. And when they come into contact with like humanoid life, they don't know if the humanoids are sentient. So the humanoids don't know if the robots are sentient because they figure they're robots. So a huge conflict starts because the two of them don't know if the other one's alive. And so they're attacking each other out of curiosity. Like, what is this thing? And so anyways, this just made me think of this episode where we've got these two warring AIs who are now the only living pieces of their culture, but they're the culture that they came from. And the culture that they came from is totally gone. So it's just such an interesting idea. Like, we have two AIs. that now will live on forever until they break down, but their only function, purpose, identity is as war machines. They don't have any broader hopes or dreams or aspirations. They can't, even though they could potentially do anything, this is all they are able to do. And I think it's just, again, it's a really interesting idea behind how do we use our AI, right? And like what's ethical, I guess. And it also reminds me of The Matrix, although The Matrix was a little different, but very similar, right? Where the humanity is kind of, enslaved to the Matrix. So I don't know, it's just a really interesting episode. Hello, hello, welcome. Welcome to everyone who's watching live and welcome to everyone who's watching on the replay. All right, episode number 8, my number 8 pick is called Vis-a-Vis, and this is season 4, episode 20. So in this episode, this identity-stealing alien switches places with Tom Paris. And it is so interesting. So this alien has this capability to kind of sample someone's DNA. And if they have a certain protein pattern or whatever that their bodies make, and that's compatible to this alien can switch bodies with them. So some kind of technological, magic happens where this person takes on the other person's entire body, not their memories, but just their body. And the person who they switch with takes on their old body. And then they go around and they live this person's life. And what they do is the person whose body they stole, they'll like put them on a shuttle and they'll jump the shuttle to another time because this person has really advanced technology that can send ships very far. And also this person is very like adventurous and loves to try new things, hence swapping bodies every time you turn around. So when this person meets Tom, and Tom's very adventurous and all this stuff, but at the time that they meet, Tom is, I don't know if he's married to B'Elanna at this time. Let me see, season 4, no. So he's dating B'Elanna. And he's just feeling really stuck. He's feeling like he's in a rut. He's doing the same thing every day, every night. Like he goes to the bridge, then he goes to sick bay, then he goes to hang out with B'Elanna, and it kind of goes on and on. So he's feeling completely bored with his life. And then he meets this person who, I don't even remember this alien's name, but he meets this alien, and the alien's like, oh man, you've got it great. Like, look, you're piloting a starship and da-da-da-da, and I'm just this lowly traveler or whatever. And basically Tom's like, no, your life's amazing. You get to travel the galaxy. That's why I got into Starfleet, because I wanted to fly and all these things. So it's kind of like it's a Wonderful Life or something like that, where he's like, man, if only I had your life, if only I had your life. And the alien the whole time is like, mwahaha, that's exactly what's going to happen. So when Voyager finds this alien needs help with their like warp drive, whatever thing. And so Tom's the one helping to fix this ship so that it can fly to wherever it's supposed to fly to. After the alien tricks Tom and switches bodies, he does it, or at the time it's a he does it on the shuttle. So after he switches bodies, he programs the shuttle to send it to the area that he was just in, where he had caused some kind of problem where the aliens there like wanted to like imprison him or blow up his ship or something. Basically, he was sending Tom into the crosshairs to get rid of the evidence, and he was going to take over Tom's life. So that's what he did. He sends Tom away with his body, and he keeps Tom's body, and he like goes on a date with B'Elanna into the holodeck, and he's just trying to like live his best life. And this lasts for about, I don't know, 4 hours or something before he's like, I hate this life. He's like, this is so bad. Like, I see why Tom wanted to leave it, because he's trying to hook up with B'Elanna in the middle of the day and have a little quickie. And she's like, oh, that's very sweet, but I actually work here. I have a job. I can't just be going off to the holodeck hooking up every 10 minutes. Like, I have a job. So he's like, you're no fun. And then the doctor's like, where have you been? You need to be in sick bay. Where's your shift? And he's like, oh, I don't want to work in sick bay. And the captain's like, you need to be, or actually probably Chakotay is like, why aren't you on the bridge? It's your shift. And he's just like, you know what? This is really annoying. This is no fun. I think it's B'Elanna who figures out something is fishy, and this is not her Tom. Anyways, they get to the bottom of it. They go and find Tom. They do something. The doctor figures out something to swap their bodies back. And the cool thing about it is Tom realizes how good he has it, right? As this alien's just like, you're right, your life does suck, and I don't even know why I wanted it. Tom is just like, wait a minute, I was tripping. Like, I thought my life wasn't great until I didn't have it anymore, until I almost lost my life. And I realized how much I love this job, and I love this place, and I love this crew, and I love B'Elanna. And it was really cool to see him like kind of get out of that rut in a really like traumatic way, but he got out of the rut. And then the alien, as they're trying to like, they arrest the alien and they're trying to get them back to wherever this body was stolen from to like face charges. They discovered that there's just an army of bodies, of people and planets where they're like, this person switched bodies with me. This person switched bodies with me. So who knows if they ever got to the bottom of it, how many bodies this person has switched, how many times this person has switched bodies. That all remains a mystery, which kind of bugs me because it's an interesting idea and I want to know what happens, but we don't get to know what happens. We do know that Tom gets his life back. All is well. This alien is arrested and taken back to the last alien body that it swapped with. So justice is served, question mark? I don't know. I don't know if we always get justice served in these episodes, but that's what happened. Okay. Number 7 on the list is an episode called Revulsion. And that is season 4, episode 5. This episode is so crazy. So B'Elanna and the doctor, maybe they're on a shuttle. I don't remember why it's the two of them, but they find a ship that is sending out a distress signal. And so they're like, okay, we've got to go help. When they get to the ship, the entire crew is gone. And there's a hologram that's like the cleaning hologram or whatever. I guess it does a bunch of grunt work on the ship. And the hologram is the one that activated the distress signal. So the doctor, who at this point has the mobile emitter, so the doctor's able to leave sick bay and travel around as he pleases. So the doctor is like, oh, cool, like I'm meeting another hologram. How interesting. He's all about it. And the B'Elanna's there because she's the engineer, she's the technical person. So they're trying to figure out what happened to the crew. And the hologram's like, I don't know. They're just gone. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know where they are. And while he's doing this, B'Elanna's looking around. She's trying to figure out what's going on with the ship. And he's like, I'm a hologram who just, cleans things or whatever. I don't know how to fly a ship. I don't know what's wrong with the ship. I don't know how to make the ship go. So B'Elanna's trying to figure out what's going on. And as B'Elanna and the doctor are looking around, you see this hologram with there's like a blood smear or something. And he wipes it up really quickly while the other two are not looking. And then you're like, oh no, something is fishy. Plus his hologram already looks sketchy AF. So you're like, something is fishy about this hologram. Well, anyways, yeah, right. So Anne just said that guy was so creepy. They cast the perfect person for this. This hologram was really like, the affect was so creepy, right? The hologram was just like, welcome to the ship. And you're just like, oh, get out of there, guys. But they're trying to help. And B'Elanna's like, hologram, no hologram. Let's fix this ship up. Let's figure out what happened to the crew. So as they're kind of going around the ship and trying to figure things out, they find the crew. The crew has all been slaughtered, messily slaughtered, and they've all been stuffed into some compartment of the ship. So now they're like, what the F? Because they quickly realize the only person who could have slaughtered them is the hologram. So we've got a serial killing hologram. This is such an interesting episode. What an interesting concept. I don't think I've ever seen that before. I don't think I've ever seen that since. They could have done it since because I haven't seen all the newer iterations of Star Trek, but what an interesting idea. Now, here's why he did it. And yes, he was crazy, but here's why he went crazy. Because apparently on this ship, the organics, as he calls them, the crew, treated this hologram like dirt, treated this hologram like trash. Not only was the hologram there to clean and cook and just kind of serve them in general, but I guess they also went out of their way to humiliate the hologram, to talk badly about the hologram. And I don't know, we don't know for sure if the organics, if the crew actually did this, or if the hologram perceived this, right? If the hologram felt like, oh, that was a slight, oh, you meant something by that. We don't know if it was just in the hologram's mind or if these things really happen. Doesn't matter because the hologram thought it happened and the hologram took a wrench to everybody. So at one point, B'Elanna's underneath some panel and she and the doctor figure out that the hologram is the one who's responsible. And they're like, what can we do? Because the hologram is everywhere in the ship. The hologram can hear us right now. So we can't leave because it's going to know and block it or whatever. We can't stop it. So the doctor's like, or maybe B'Elanna, I don't know which one has this great idea, but there's a way to to turn off his program. But the only way is you have to be in some special part of the ship, like the control to access the whatever. So she's like, all right, doctor, you keep the hologram busy and I'm going to go disable this thing. So that's what they do. They kind of split up and the doctor's trying to keep the hologram busy somewhere else in the ship while B'Elanna's disengaging this thing. And the hologram shows up while she's doing this and takes a wrench to her. And he's swinging the wrench and hitting everything. And oh my gosh. And she's just ducking and trying to fight, but she can't fight a hologram because when she tries to swing, it goes right through him. So it's crazy. But anyway, she deactivates it, or so she thinks. But of course the hologram has a backup and comes back. And you're like, oh my gosh, they're not going to make it out of this ship. Somehow the doctor saves the day with deactivating it for real, permanently. And again, with the where are they now? I don't know what happened to that ship. I don't know if they just let it drift aimlessly. I don't know if they let the people who owned the ship know that like this happened, because I don't even know how that happens in space. Like, how do you let people know, hey, we found your ship? I don't know what happened. I don't know if the Ferengi claimed it. I don't know what happened to that ship afterwards. But they were able to turn everything off and get off of the ship. And the thing is, not only was this hologram like, not only did it despise organics, and not only did it slaughter its entire crew, but it also had like OCD. Like, it had everything needed to be cleaned like at all times, and it was always scrubbing and cleaning things. And it was talking about, like, this is how we knew something was really off. It was talking to the doctor privately about how gross humans are. And it was just like, they leave their fingerprints and their secretions and their hair follicles. And I mean, just the way it was talking, you were like, yeah, humans are kind of gross, right? He was like, with their smells and their drips. And that's why he's always cleaning, because organics apparently just leave their smears and secretions on everything they touch, which, if you've ever seen little babies, that's kind of true. Anyways, this episode, mind-blowing. Such an interesting concept, super creepy, super dark, highly recommend. Oh, why did you program me to feel pain? I don't know if this, so PS2 Cypher says, why did you program me to feel pain? I don't know if this hologram could feel pain. Perhaps. I don't remember that. But there is another species in the Delta Quadrant called the Hirogen, and they're hunters, and they like hunting, just like they like hunting for fun. So they hunt all these other species and stuff like that. But then they realize that if they keep doing that, they're going to hunt everything in their quadrant to extinction, and their way of life will no longer exist. They capture Voyager, they start hunting them, but they use the hologram or the holodecks to like hunt them over and over and over. They hunt them, they kill them, they have the doctor like revive them, and then they put them back into the holodeck. So the resolution of that was to give them holograms that they could hunt, and to be like, okay, you go hunt these holograms, you can hunt them all day and all night without actually hunting the species in the Delta Quadrant, so you can continue your way of life. So that was all well and good, except for the fact that part of the fun for Hirogens apparently was like the terror that their prey would feel and the pain that their prey would feel. So instead of just having holograms that are programmed to be prey of all different species that they could hunt, instead they programmed them to be afraid and to remember, also to remember every single time that they've been killed before. So it was just like this level of cruelty that was outrageous. The holograms ended up all banding together and fighting against the Hirogen, and I think they destroyed most of the Hirogen, and then Voyager had to be called in. It was just a thing. That's another good episode. It's not on my list, but oof, such a good, it's a series of episodes, because there's the 2 episodes where they capture Voyager, then there's the 1 episode when the holograms rebel against this awful violence, because it was totally unnecessary for them to traumatize the holograms like that. Okay. The next pick on the list, pick number 6. Yeah, pick number 6 is called Alice, and that is season 6, episode 5. This is another Tom Paris episode. In this episode, Tom Paris becomes obsessed with this ship. They find a ship in they go to some shipyard, like a junkyard, and they're looking for some kind of special parts that they can't replicate or something. And they find this little shuttle in the back of nowhere. And Tom is like, "Ooh, that's like, we need a faster shuttle. Like, I think I really want that shuttle." And the person who runs the shipyard is like, "Yes, take the shuttle." He does some kind of deal, but he's like, "Yes, fine, take the shuttle, take it off my hands. I'll give you a good deal," or whatever. So Tom takes the shuttle, and he's like working on it every day, and he's like missing work shifts and missing dates with B'Elanna because he's just so into this ship, kind of like working on an old car. But what we find out later is that the ship is more than just a ship. The ship has bioneural circuitry, just like Voyager. So it's got some kind of, a brain, so to speak, but it also has a personality. And it takes on the body of like this really beautiful woman, and it connects directly to Tom's brain. So it shows up as this beautiful woman who's bossing Tom around, basically, but who seduces Tom and then bosses him around. So you're watching, you're just like, yeah, so PS2 Cypher says, talk about Stephen King, Christina. Yeah, so this ship is like, you have to take me to some place. It was a particle fountain, but I forget what she called it. But it was like so just in space, it was like all the stream of like protons or something. And anyway, she was like, you have to take me there. No one else can take me there but you, Tom. You're the best, Tom, and all these things. And she's directly connected to his brain because that's part of the ship. And so as he's fixing the ship, he's like, I don't know. And you just see him deteriorate over time. Like, he's not sleeping. He's not eating. He's so obsessed with this ship. And B'Elanna is like, something is wrong with him. And every time she questions him, we see that the ship, like the image of the ship, the ghost of the ship, the part that's in his mind, is standing right next to him, telling him what to say. Tell her this, tell her that, tell her to leave us alone, tell her to mind her own business and all this stuff. So he's just being such a jerk to B'Elanna. And she's like, dude, what is your issue? And why are you so obsessed with this ship? It's just a stupid ship. And he's like, you never understood me and leave me alone and all these things. So anyways, he gets into the ship, and the way the ship fully connects is it actually connects to like his spine and his brain. So his entire body moves the ship instead of him using controls. And she's like, then there'll be no barriers between us, Tom. You just think a thought and I'll fly it. And I'm the fastest ship you'll ever fly and all this stuff. So he falls for all of this. So he gets on the ship. He leaves Voyager like without authorization, basically quits his job, leaves his girlfriend, gets off the ship, and he's flying to this particle fountain. And he's like, just a little, and it's just, it's so hard to watch because you see his eyes are all sunken in, and you see he like is almost catatonic, and she's just like, come on, Tom, take me, like, hurry up, go, you gotta go, you gotta go. And he's just like, we're almost there, Alice, we're almost there. So they get to the particle fountain, and they're flying in, which by the way is probably going to completely destroy the ship and Tom. But she's like, no, it's just going to lead us to this like magical place. It's going to take us through space time or something like that. And they figure out what's going on. They figure out that there's something wrong with the ship. They go back to the junkyard and they talk to that guy who sold the ship. And then he starts saying like, okay, yes, the ship did, infect me too. And the ship was talking to me too, but I couldn't take her to the particle fountain. And she got so mad. And so she said I had to find a real pilot for her. And that's why when I saw you guys, I knew you were perfect. And as he's talking, that version of the ship pops up next to him in his like same species. And she's like, are you talking about me? I told you never to talk about me. That's it. And kills him right there, like through his brain or something. So then they're like, okay, something really is going on. It is the ship, and the ship has lethal intent. So we need to save Tom. We need to get him out of that ship. We need to get him away from that thing. And so they catch up with the shuttle just as it's about to enter, or with the ship just as it's about to enter the particle stream, the particle fountain. And B'Elanna is able to, they do some kind of mental relay. And so she's able to project herself directly into Tom's mind. And she's like, Tom, come back to me and all this stuff. And Alice is like, don't listen to her. Forget about her. Take us to the particle fountain. And he's like, it's like the little angel devil on the shoulders. And they're both like, keep going, Tom. Don't go, Tom. Come back, Tom. Keep going. And so he's like, I don't know what to do. And he's freaking out. And then eventually, like at the last second, he agrees with B'Elanna. He disengages all the like connections to his body, and they beam him out just as the ship enters the particle fountain and explodes. Now, it could be that if the ship went perfectly through the particle fountain the way Alice wanted it to, maybe it would have gone into bliss or paradise. We will never know. But as soon as he was gone, the ship didn't have a pilot, so it just kind of tumbled into the fountain, and then it blew up. And good riddance, because that ship was awful. So I think after it blew up, then there was no more memory of it inside of Tom's mind, as far as it, jumping out of the blue and being like, Tom, you better listen to me. However, like the trauma of that, of having something connected to your brain, yikes, right? Such a good episode. Just such an intriguing episode. It's almost like Be Careful What You Wish For, because he wanted a really nice ship. But also, like, we can't really blame Tom for some mind-controlling ship that came along and decided this is what we're going to do, and kind of seduced him in the level of his actual thoughts, which is nuts. Anyway, super good episode. Highly recommend. Never had that relationship in real life. Which one? Like a crazy relationship with a ship? Nope. Never had that. Not yet. Day is young. So episode number 5 on the list. And again, I'm doing the top 10 best Voyager episodes. This is episode number 5. This episode is called The Shoot, and it is season 3, episode 3. It's like I'm gonna get emotional because this episode like makes me so, I always cry at the end of this episode. Okay, in this episode, Tom and Harry are in a prison. And we don't know why. We kind of find out later in the episode, but that's not even the point. The point is that they're in prison. And they're in prison with like the most hardened criminals. And this prison is nuts. There's one chute that goes down into the prison, and it opens once a day, and food is dropped down the chute. And like, prisoners are dropped down the chute. Like, it's the only entrance and exit into this prison. There's no prison guards. So that means the prisoners can do whatever they want to anyone. And there's no one who's going to say anything about it. So when a new prisoner comes down the chute, it's like the second they hit the ground. Well, there's a buzzer before the chute opens. So everyone's like, oh, we know it's going to open. So everyone rushes the chute, and they're like waiting at the bottom. So when a prisoner drops down, The second that prisoner hits the ground, they've taken his shoes, they've taken his boots, they've taken his clothes, they've taken like everything off of him and probably beat the crap out of him too. And then he's like, what's even going on? When the food comes down, the biggest, scariest, meanest ones kind of like intimidate all the rest. They go and get whatever food they want, and then everyone else has to fight over the scraps. So in the episode, the biggest, baddest one is talking to Harry, because Harry is like, we're going to get out of this and we're going to use science, right? Like these two probably don't belong in this prison. They belong in some like white collar prison because they can't hang with this crew. But anyways, Harry and Tom are like, we got to get out of here. And Harry's like, we can use science. Like, I know it. He's watching the shoot. He's timing it. He's figuring out the schedule. He's looking at the force field. He's like, we are going to be able to get out of the shoot. Like, I know we can do it. And the meanest, baddest guy, oh, this is season 3, episode 3, The Shoot. So the meanest, baddest guy kind of is like Harry's able to convince him, like, we can get out with enough resources, we can get out. So he's like, all right, cool. I'll make sure you get like, pipes or wires or whatever the heck you need so that you can like get us out. If you really think you can get us out. He's like, I know I can get us out. So while he's trying to figure out some kind of way to get out, this biggest, baddest guy is giving his manifesto. And he's like, you know what this place is about, right? It's all about control. They're trying to control us. They're trying to control our emotions. They're poisoning us through the food, and they're ramping up our aggression because they want us to get aggressive and they want us to just destroy each other. And Harry is like, what are you talking about? You are so paranoid. And also I don't have time for this because I'm trying to open the door so we can all escape. And he's like, you have to believe me. Like, this is what's going on. This is the truth. And Harry's like, whatever. So, Harry finds a way to like climb up the chute and deactivate the force field and something. And you think like, okay, he's figured it out. They're going to go free. Well, when he gets to the top of the chute, after all this blood, sweat, and tears, and he looks out, he finds out that they're not on a planet after all, but they're actually on a spaceship. They are in space. So if they open that chute, they're all going to be sucked out into space. You cannot get out. You cannot escape. This whole time they thought they were on a planet and that they could escape and at least, I don't know, hide in the forest or something until Voyager came to get them. But now he realizes it's hopeless. So when he comes back down, he's just like, I don't even, he's kind of lost the reason to live almost. And now he's like, okay, we just have to survive. So once this happens, the biggest, baddest guy is like, okay, so where's your promise? You said you could get us out. And he's like, well, turns out we're in space. So yeah, about that, we can't really get out. And he's like, what? Not only that, but the manifesto that this guy wrote, Tom has like gone crazy and he's ripped it up. And so the guy's like, oh, I'm about to kill him. So he goes to attack him, and then Harry has to like defend him. But you see Tom again is just totally deteriorating. Harry's also deteriorating. And you see the both of them, like their anxiety is going up, their aggression's going up, their anger is going up. Like they just cannot function. But Harry is like, we just need to survive. We need to survive. We need to make it. We need to make it until Voyager comes to get us. Yeah. Yes. Anne says it's one of her favorites, but so intense. It's one of my favorites too. So, at one point, Harry makes some little device, maybe it's a beacon or a little weapon or some kind of little device that's going to like save them. And he goes out to find other pieces. When he comes back, Tom has smashed the device, and he smashed it because he's losing his mind and he doesn't know what he's doing or where he's at. And so Harry is so over it. He picks up a pipe and he's about to like do in Tom, like his best friend. He's about to just do him in with the pipe, and something stops him. And he's like, like, I can't do this anymore. And he's like, you're on your own and all this stuff. Well, later on, something else happens and all the people gang up against Tom and they're like ready to take him out. And Tom is just like, he's on the ground. He's really lost it. He's totally gone. And so they're all like, all right, we get to take his boot. They're actually calling parts of him. They're like, I'm taking his boots. And someone else is like, I'm taking his jacket. I'm taking his shirt. And Tom's like shaking on the floor. And Harry comes along and he sees what's going on. And he takes that same pipe and he starts swinging it. And he's like, this man's my friend. Nobody touches him unless you come through me. And you're like, oh, shoot. Like, I didn't know Harry had that in him. And just as he's about to like just start swinging and taking off heads, Janeway appears, Tuvok appears, Voyager appears. They beam them out and they come to safety. And so they're in, they go to sick bay and they get everything all like fixed up and they're kind of walking through the hallway and they're both like, kind of shaking like, yeah, no, Tom could never survive a South American prison. Tom, yeah, not at least not if they're putting stuff in the water. Well, it turns out because the doctor told him they were putting things in the food. They were putting things in the water. They were increasing their aggression. Everything that guy said, the biggest, baddest guy said in his manifesto was true. They were trying to get them to destroy each other. Why? Because they're criminals and they're in prison and they don't care what happens to them anyways, which is like awful. Um, and so as they're walking down the hallway, Tom is like, "Ooh, let's go to like the mess hall and let's go get steak and chocolate and all those things we dreamt about to keep us going when we were in prison." And Harry's like, "I can't like I." He's like, "Don't you remember what happened when we were back there?" And he's like, "What are you talking about? I remember us talking about all these, all this great food we're gonna eat when we get back and we're back." And he was like, "No, I almost, beat you with a pipe. I almost ended you with a pipe. Don't you remember that?" And Tom is like, "No, you know what I remember? I remember you saying, 'This man's my friend and no one touches him.' And I'm gonna remember that for a long time." See, I'm getting emotional. That scene always like gets me because I love the friendship between Tom and Harry. Like I love it so much. As much as I love Data and Jordy, because like there's no pretense between them. They know kind of each other's weaknesses and strengths, and they're there for each other anyways. They're like the kinds of friends that I aspire to be with my friends. So it's just like a beautiful ending. I always cry at the end. It's such a good episode. It is super intense. It's the episode called, yeah, The Shoot, season 3, episode 3. Super good. But yeah, like Anne said, it's intense. It's like not really happy in any way. Like just the whole thing, you're like, oh, I hope they get out. Okay, so taking it in a different direction. Episode number 4 on the list is called Blood Fever, and it is season 3, episode 16. Oh, this is another good one. So in this one, a Vulcan, it's Vulcan mating season for one of the Vulcans who works in engineering. And you know that when Vulcans are in mating season, they get live. Like they can get pretty intense. But the challenge is that this Vulcan, I think his name is Varric, is not in the Alpha Quadrant. So, and this Vulcan's like really young. It's actually this Vulcan's very first Ponfar ever. So there's not like, oh yeah, I've done this before, whatever. So this Vulcan's pretty young. It's his first Ponfar, and he doesn't know what to do. And he's not in the Alpha Quadrant, so he's nowhere near planet Vulcan. And there's only so many people on the ship because remember, the Voyager is stranded in the Delta Quadrant. So it's like these are your Alpha Quadrant people to pick from. Like these 1,000 people, or however many people are on the ship. I actually don't even know how many people are on the complement of Voyager. So it's like this is your choice. And out of them, how many are available and willing? He decides B'Elanna is going to be his mate because he works in engineering. She's the chief engineer. He respects her. She's hardworking. She's intelligent. She's beautiful. She's everything he would want in a mate, which is what she tells him, which is what he tells her in the beginning. Like, you're everything I want in a mate. So you B'Elanna, will be my mate. And she's like, what the F? No, I won't. Like, I'm not going to mate with you just because you want me to. Get out of here. But remember, he's going through the Ponfar. So he's like, we have to mate. We have to mate right now. And she's like, get off of me before I break you in half. So he like does a Vulcan mind meld on her. And he's like, be my mate or whatever. In doing that, he transfers the Ponfar from himself to her. So she goes into Ponfar. And she is half Klingon, half human, and 0% Vulcan. So now she's in heat, just like he is. And he's thinking like, and he didn't even know he could do this. He didn't even know he had this superpower. But now they're both at the same level. So he's like, you will be mine. And so she breaks his nose because it's B'Elanna. She's like, get off me, you little creep. And so next thing you know, she's like going through the Ponfar. And she's getting really into Tom. And this is before they were a thing. This is before they were a couple. This is before they ever hooked up. So she's getting really into Tom, but she's doing it Klingon style, right? So she's biting him and growling and sniffing and doing all the stuff that Klingons do. And he's like, Tom is kind of like, because Tom's a playboy. So he's kind of like, yes, but also like, no, like he's wanted to sleep with B'Elanna for the longest time. But as he says to her, I wouldn't be your friend if I let you do it when you weren't in your right mind. And right now you are not in your right mind. And she's just like, oh, you're trying to kill me. Like, I can't go on without this or whatever. Because at the time they're trapped in a cave for some reason. And so he's like, I don't want to kill you. I don't want to hurt you, but I cannot let you do this. You're going to hate me forever if I go through with this because you're not yourself. So inside the cave, she like passes out at some point. When she wakes up, she's kind of back to her senses and she's like, where are we? Why are we in a cave? What's going on? And he's like, phew, good thing I didn't do anything because you'd be like, what is going on? Like, she wouldn't remember. So anyways, Tuvok explains that what the Ponfar is it's like a biochemical imbalance in a Vulcan's brain. And in this case, B'Elanna's as well. And if you don't satisfy that Ponfar, you actually die. Isn't that crazy? So he was like, and there's only a couple ways to satisfy it. 1, satisfy it with a mate. 2, satisfy it with a fight to the death. because one way or another, you have to get all of these like chemicals out of your body with other chemicals, I guess. Maybe adrenaline is the source of like saving you from the Ponfar. But if that were true, you could just inject them with adrenaline. Well, anyways, um, so they end up so Vorik is like he so Tom and B'Elanna are on this planet, like where they were in the cave, and I don't even know why they're on this planet, but they're on this planet. And then Vorik is like, he's down there with my mate and she's my mate. First of all, he pretends like he's cool. Tuvok is like, here, I'm going to make you a holographic Vulcan woman. You go and enjoy the hologram and you'll be all better. So Vorik pretends like it's all well. He enjoyed the hologram. Ponfar's over. And then as soon as Tuvok turns his back, he like disables all the ship's transporters and like transports himself to the planet or takes a shuttle or something. But he disables all communications with the ship and everything else so that he and B'Elanna will be trapped on the planet. So that like there's no choice but for them to mate, or at least that's what he's thinking. But you know, B'Elanna, she's not going for that. So, anyways, when he finds them, B'Elanna and Tom are totally going at it in the forest because B'Elanna's like, please, I need this. If you don't do this, I'm gonna die. And Tom's like, oh, if you insist. So they start making out, and he's like, all right, let's go. And Vorik happens upon them, and he's like, what? And he picks up Tom and like throws him, and Tuvok is there because I don't know why either, but he's there. He shows up also, and Vorik is like, I declare something. And he's like, a fight to the death with Tom over my mate because she's my mate. And B'Elanna's like, I'm your what? And so B'Elanna's like, if you want somebody to fight, I will fight you myself. And Vorik's like, wait, is that in the rule book? And Tuvok's like, yeah, you're fighting for her affections, and she has the right to choose her own champion, even herself. So he's like, they're like, bring it. Chakotay's also there. I don't know why. And so Chakotay's like, you can't let them fight. They're going to tear each other to pieces. And Tuvok is like, well, there's either the certainty that they will both die from a chemical imbalance if we do nothing, or we let them both fight it out and hopefully get out all those chemicals. And there will be a certain chance of like, damage, but neither one was probably going to die, or maybe only one of them. And we could bring him back. So anyways, they let them fight. And it's such a fun fight to watch because it's like a Vulcan versus Klingon. It's so interesting. B'Elanna does the Klingon double fist punch thing and all that. Anyways, they have this big fight. They get all out of their system. The Ponfar is over. They're both back in sickbay, kind of back to themselves. Vorik goes about his business, feeling really embarrassed. But B'Elanna is also feeling really embarrassed for how she acted around Tom. And Tom was just like, she's like, I'm sorry that you had to see that. Ugh, like see the Klingon side of me. Awful. And Tom is like, I didn't mind it at all. And I wouldn't mind seeing it again, as long as you're in your right mind. You're not being when you're not being chemically induced. And the very last scene, they're in the turbo lift, and, she's feeling so awkward. And Tom is just like, it's not a big deal. And then she looks over at Tom and she goes, careful what you wish for, fly boy. And then like the turbo lift doors close and the episode's off. And you're like, oh, is there going to be something between them? Which we know there is later on. But yeah, that was a really good episode. Like so much fun to watch. Yeah, so PS2 Cypher saying, I remember she whooped his butt. Yes, absolutely. How many guys would be her friend? I don't know. I'm a B'Elanna fan, but yeah, she'd be a tough one to be friends with, I think. Okay, episode number 3 on the list is oh no. PS2 Cypher says, I think ferrets suffer from that in real life. Well, a lot of animals go into heat, but I don't know about going into heat so badly that you like pass away from a chemical imbalance. That's kind of nuts. And if ferrets go through that, that's super sad. Okay, episode number 3 is the episode called Relativity, and that is season 5, episode 24. And that's when Captain Braxton of the 24th Century Federation time ship finds Seven of Nine and tasks her with finding a saboteur on board because the Voyager blows up at some point. Like it blows up tomorrow, let's say. Or I think by the end of the day, it blows up. So he brings Seven of Nine to the time ship and he's like, you've got to figure out who the saboteur is or the ship's going to explode. And so he keeps sending her back into different time points to try to figure out when the bomb gets planted. And not just different time points like in the current timeline, but all the way back to Utopia Planitia, where it's like maybe the bomb was planted like as soon as the ship was built, because it has to do with time. They're like, it could be at any time because somebody who has to do with time put the bomb in and I don't know what. But anyways, after going back and forth and trying to figure out who, and the ship keeps blowing up over and over and over, and then time gets reset and then Seven gets sent back. Well, we come to find out at the end of the episode that the person who was the saboteur who had been trying to blow up Voyager was Captain Braxton himself. Not the same captain who had this mission to send Seven of Nine to figure out this mystery, but a Captain Braxton from the future, like a future him that has done so much more time travel that he starts to have, like, I think they call it time psychosis or something like that, but where you lose your mind because of time travel and how it like unravels however you're supposed to function. Well, the thing is, Voyager is always breaking the temporal prime directive. Voyager is always jumping into the wrong timeline, like all the time. So many, one of my friends was watching Voyager for the first time. We watched the first couple of episodes together, and she was like, why have they time traveled like 3 times and it's only been 5 episodes, right? Like they're always doing time travel. And Captain Braxton's job is to clean up their mess. So every time they jump timelines, Captain Braxton has to go through and like fix the timeline, kind of like the TVA and Loki. So they have to like go back and fix the timeline. And so I guess at some future point, Captain Braxton has been going back in time so much cleaning up the Voyager's mess that he goes, you know what? If we just don't have the Voyager, I won't have to do all this. I won't have to clean up all their messes, and I won't go crazy from all this time travel. So when they figure that out, and he's like, how could it be me? I'm the one running this investigation. How could it be me? But it's like future me, and it's super confusing, but they end up arresting him on the spot. Like his second in command is like, you're under arrest for time crimes. And he's like, but I didn't do anything. This was my investigation. He's like, well, future you does it. So present you also gets arrested. So they arrest present you and future you, and then they integrate them, which I feel like is not really fair. I don't know if you've seen the movie Minority Report, but in that movie, the precogs, or the people that, 3 people who can like see the future or whatever, will tell the crime unit a crime that's about to happen, and then the police can get there before the crime happens. So then there's this question of like, is that really fair because the crime didn't even happen and you're putting them away for crimes they didn't do? But then the other thing is like, well, we don't want these violent crimes to happen. So we don't want to wait till after the fact when it's too late. But then the question is like, but what if that crime was just a thought in their minds, but they don't actually do it, right? There's a lot of layers there. And this is a very similar thing where it's like present you gets arrested because of what future you does, because it's still you and it's going to become you. And then they integrate them together and they both get sentenced. And it's kind of like, but now that he knows that future him does that, couldn't he just maybe like quit his job and get a different job, and then he won't become that guy? I don't know. I thought that was kind of messed up, but that's what happened. I remember that episode. It really stretched Jerry Ryan's acting chops. Yeah, I love the episodes when the actors get to do more than they normally do, and we get to see like a broader range. Another episode with Jerry Ryan, who's the actress who plays Seven of Nine, that I really like is when the doctor kind of like jumps into her body and takes over. And so the whole time Jerry Ryan is acting like the doctor. It's so fun. Like I love it when they do the swaps. Okay. Episode number 2 on the list. Number 2 is worst case scenario. And that is season 3, episode 25. In this episode, this is another one of my favorites. In this episode, somebody discovers I think it's maybe B'Elanna or somebody. Yeah, I think B'Elanna, when she's going through just like clearing stuff out of the ship's records or whatever, she comes upon a holo novel that seems really realistic because it's based on the entire crew. But it's a holo novel where things didn't go the way they did in their real timeline. So instead of the Maquis crew and the Starfleet crew coming together to make one new crew that's trying to get back to the Alpha Quadrant, instead, in this case, the Maquis take over. They take over the ship. And so, and then like you get to choose. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure. You either get to choose to be part of Starfleet, who's trying to take the ship back from the Maquis, or you can just play along and be a part of the Maquis and just kind of see how it unravels. So she discovers this holo novel, and then she tells Tom, and Tom tells Harry, and Harry tells the doctor, and the doctor tells everyone. So everyone on the ship is playing this holo novel, but they're playing it secretly because it's so like divisive, right? To be like, oh my gosh, because at this point, this is what, season 3. So they've already had years together as one crew. So it's very kind of like almost taboo to play this game where you're saying, what if we never became one crew? What if we were still at each other's throats? What would it look like? And so it's just kind of fun to watch and see the characters playing different characters and playing different roles and, all the different things. But when Janeway is like, because Janeway ends up playing herself, and when she brings it to the bridge crew, the senior staff, she's like, okay, who has heard of this holo novel and who's played it? And they're all like, all of them have played it. And she's like, all right, get to the bottom of who wrote this novel because it needs to be finished, because it turns out the holo novel isn't done. It ends with, I think Seska and Chakotay have everybody lined up in a warehouse or in a cargo bay. And they're like, if you're with us, be with us. If you're not with us, we're going to drop you off at the nearest M-class planet. but then that's where it ends. So they're like, we need more story. We need to know what happens. Like, what's the resolution? And so Janeway's like, do everything you can to figure out who the author of this holo novel is, because we need to figure out like how the story ends. And then Tuvok is like, there's no need. It was me. And everyone's like, what? No, it wasn't. You are like the least imaginative person on the entire ship. There's no way it could be you. And he's like, well, it's actually not a holo novel. He's like, it's a security training protocol for junior security officers to teach them how to act if the Maquis turn on us. I created it way back in the day when we first became two crews because I didn't trust them and I was super suspicious and I wanted to make sure that our officers were ready to handle it. But when I realized that the crews were kind of becoming one and everything was gelling and there was no risk there, I stopped writing the security training because there was no need. And I thought that just having it was going to incite the division that I was trying to prevent in the first place. So Janeway says, yeah, you need to lighten up. She's like, that time is way past. And at this point, we are so far away from the Alpha Quadrant. We're not privy to the new songs and holo novels and all these other things that make up culture. So we're going to have to start making our own, starting with this. So you need to finish the novel. So he's like, no, I couldn't possibly. It's not right. So then Tom is like, well, I like writing, so I'm going to write it. I'll finish the story. I think I can make it really exciting. So he's making the story like, he wants to make the story really wild, like, and then Janeway comes back and she executes everyone, or just all these things. And Tuvok is like, that is not how characters act. So they're kind of going back and forth. And Tuvok's like, I'm going to help you write this. And Tom's like, I don't need your help to write this. So they're like, they both go together to the holodeck. And the doctor is there with some notes. And Neelix has some notes. And everyone has some notes. B'Elanna has some notes about how they should make the story better. And they're like, we've got this. We've got this. So they go to the holodeck. They turn it back on. Like they turn the program back on and they put it in editing mode so they can finish the story. And the second they turn it on, they find themselves in the brig. And they're like, well, this is weird because we haven't told the computer which chapter to start at. And then Seska comes out of nowhere. And they're like, okay, end program, and nothing happens. And Seska's like, Tuvok, this must be you. You must have activated the program. Well, guess what? I found the program 3 years ago, and I saw how much you think of the Maquis, and you're such a traitor anyways, because remember, Tuvok was a secret member of the Maquis. I mean, he wasn't secret, but he was like a spy with the Maquis at the beginning of the show. So she's like, I didn't realize you were such a traitor, so I feel like this is what you deserve as a traitor. So she's rewritten the entire holo novel to make every single character attack them. And then she was like, and at the end, I'm going to finish you off. And they're like, computer in program. In program. There's no way to end the program. It's such a good episode. Hey Nadia, no worries. Super glad you're here. So we are on episode 2 out of the list of 10. We're on the second to last episode. So we're talking about worst case scenario, season 3, episode 25 of Voyager. Yeah, Seska, she's such a good bad guy because she's like so reasonable. Sometimes, you're just like, well, yeah, you just want to get home. Like I get that. Anyways, so now Tom and Tuvok are like, how do we get out of this holodeck program alive? And so they're like, well, we can't hack anything. We can't access anything. They try to like get help from the other characters. And like they go to the doctor and they're like, because I think Siska like shot Tom just to be like, just so you know, the safety protocols are off. So they go to sick bay, to like the holographic sick bay, and the doctor injects Tom in the wound with something else. He's like a little proverbial salt in the wound, and he injects him, and Tom's like, and then Tuvok's like tries to shoot him, but he's a hologram inside he tries to shoot him with a holographic weapon to a hologram. And so the doctor manhandles both of them and just tosses them out of sick bay like they're rag dolls. And so then Tuvok is like, okay, well, looks like all the characters are programmed to torture us. So let's try to avoid every single crew person and just like get through this. And they're like, well, the only way to end this program, since we can't hack it, is to finish it. But obviously they don't want to finish the way she wants it to finish because Seska's going to finish it with their... So they're like, okay, what are we going to do? So they're trying to figure out how to save the day. In the meantime, when that program activated, Seska had also set a bunch of booby traps. So the second that program was reinitialized, all the transporters on the ship went down. So there's no way to transport Tuvok and Tom out. There's no way to open the doors. You know how they have those like suction cuppy thingies where they can like pry open doors? There's no way to open the doors. I think a force field, like a level 10 force field, went up immediately. They can't open the doors. They can't override the doors. They can't transport them out. They cannot save them. But the one thing that they do have is that the editing program is still open. So Janeway finds a terminal in engineering and she's like, well, time to start writing. So she goes in and starts changing the characters. She changes the character of Chakotay so that instead of shooting Tom and Tuvok, he's like, you know what? I don't think we should shoot them. I think we should let them go. And Seska's like, what's wrong with you? We planned this. This is going to be amazing. This is our time to shine, you and me, and all this stuff. And Chakotay's like, no, I'm in charge. I'm the boss. I say we don't shoot them and we let them go free. So Seska's like, well, guess you outlived your usefulness, and just like boom, and blows them away. And you're like, oh shoot. So it turns out every change that Janeway makes to the program, however Seska wrote it, it rewrites the program to go back to its original ending. So they're just going back and forth and back and forth. And it's such a good episode, because the reason why I picked this episode, not only is it so good and everyone should watch it, but Chakotay, not only is it a good episode and everybody should watch it, but also, to me, it feels kind of like a yearbook, because it's like, this is what the ship could have been. This is kind of stories that could have happened. These are the characters we do see, but it's them playing a totally different role from what they chose to play, but a role they could have easily played had things gone a little bit differently. Chakotay could have totally turned on Janeway and not fallen back on his Starfleet training, but been like, you know what, forget Starfleet. I'm Maquis now. Like, all of this could have happened. It's like, I really like that, how you see the characters kind of behaving differently from how you would normally see them. Super interesting. Well, in the end, for anyone who has not seen this episode yet, in the end, they managed to program the story so that the original Starfleet crew who were kicked off of the ship in the hologram got help from some like alien colony that they were going to go visit. And so the alien colony comes and they're like firing at the holographic Voyager so that everyone's attentions are divided. And so at this point, Seska is being held at phaser point by Tuvok. So Tuvok and Tom are like standing there and they've got her at phaser point, and she's just like, well, and then she says like ship self-destruct or whatever. And she's like, the ship is going to self-destruct. And when she does that, it sets off another cascade to where the ship is not going to self-destruct, but the holodeck will. The holodeck will self-destruct with them in it. So she's like, do what you want, fire that phaser and be self-destructed anyways. So he's like, all right, fine. So he like pushes some buttons, presumably putting the safeties on, and hands it back to her. And she's like, good. Now, like I said, and she goes to fire and it backfires and like she shoots herself somehow. And it's so satisfying. Like, it's such a satisfying ending. You're just like, oh, and he's like, Seska's not the only one who knows how to set phasers to backfire, because at one point holographic Janeway comes and tries to save the day, but one of the phasers backfires and she's like disintegrated. And that's when Tom and Tuvok are like, let's just get in the Jeffries tubes. Like, let's not find any more people because everything is awful here. And so as soon as Seska's done, the ship, like the hologram disappears. They're standing in the holodeck, safe and sound. And then Harry goes, Captain, the transporters are back up. I can get them now. And she's just like, it's okay. Take your time. No worries. Because now they're safe and the day is saved. One of the things that Tom says that I love, and right to Nadia's point that Seska is like such a good character, like such a good bad guy, is that at one point, Tom turns to Tuvok and is like, you never should have crossed her, Tuvok. You never should have crossed Seska. You know how she is. And he's like, Seska has been dead for like a year, or however long she's been dead at this point. It's like, how was I supposed to know her ghost was going to come back and haunt us? And Tom is just kind of like, it's Seska. Of course her ghost is going to come back and haunt us, which is just like, makes her such a good character again. Okay. So yeah, love Seska, bar none, the best villain in Voyager, in my opinion. And so that's from Nadia. And then Anne says, that's hard to argue. Nadia says she's super logical, and frankly, she's super competent. She's super talented. And Martha Hackett, who plays Seska, just plays that role to perfection. I wonder whatever happened to Seska's baby. We never find out what happened to Seska's baby, because Maj Kula takes Seska's baby to like the Kazon Nistrum to go be raised as Kazon, I guess. A friend of mine says, I like to think that the baby made Maj Kula like a nicer person. Like the baby softened him as a father, and he started to have different perspectives on the world and life. And I was like, why on earth would that be true? But that's like her vision of what happens to the baby. The baby grows up and like makes Maj Kula a better person, which is really, really sweet. Yeah. Okay. So now we are down to number 1, my top pick for top 10 episodes of Star Trek Voyager. Episode number 1 is called Equinox, and that's season 5, episode 25, and season 6, episode 1. It's a 2-parter. Now, In these 2 episodes, the Voyager encounters another Alpha Quadrant ship called the Equinox. It's a much smaller ship with a much smaller crew complement. But when they discover the Equinox, it's being attacked by these like interphasic beings that can like just come out of subspace anywhere into the ship, and they make this screeching sound. They're like little banshees. They actually remind me of, the alien and aliens that like pops out of the chest burster thingy. It kind of reminds me of that. But they fly. So they fly and they screech, and then they zap you, and they like, I don't know, they zap you and they take all your life force energy, whatever, but you can't let them touch you. But like they fly around. So, anyways, when they first find the Equinox is being attacked by these interphasic species. And they're like, what's going on? And they're like, Mayday, Mayday, sending out distress calls. So the Voyager comes along and puts a force field, or not a force field, puts shields up around both ships. And that kind of keeps the beings away for a while. And they're just like, pss, 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 at the ends of the shield. And so they get the Equinox crew and they're like, what's going on? Why are these aliens attacking you? And they're like, we don't know. We were dragged here by the caretaker, and we've been trying to make our way back to the Alpha Quadrant, and these aliens won't leave us alone, and they just keep attacking us. And look, there's only this many of us left. So on their entire ship of the Equinox, there's like 6 crewmen left or something like that. Something really small, like less than 10 are still living and functioning this, and dealing with this entire ship. And so Janeway is like, all right, and their ship is just beat to all get out. Like their ship is hanging on with bubblegum and shoestrings. And so Janeway's like, why don't you just come on our ship and we can go to the Alpha Quadrant together? And that captain, whose name I'm totally blanking on, is like, no, I must stay on my ship because it's my ship. And the captain goes down with their ship. And, it's so special to me emotionally. And the whole crew is on board. We all need to stay on our ship. So it's like, a little sus, but okay, Janeway could understand. Yeah, you love your ship, I love my ship. I would never want to abandon it, so I get that. So they're trying to like help fix the ship, but the crew is being really like, you can't go into engineering. Like it's flooded. It's flooded with all this gas or whatever, and you can't go down there, and it'll poison you. So just don't worry about that part. Fix these other parts of the ship. So they're like, okay, we can't just clear out the gas. Oh no, because the system's down. Whatever. Well, come to find out that these interphasic aliens. Come to find out that the story is so messed up. That's why I'm pausing, because I'm just like, these people are just so messed up. So the crew of the Equinox was on this planet. They were on this planet meeting with these aliens, and these aliens called forth these interphasic beings. This is like their sacred being. And so they use some kind of like flute or something, and it's part of their ceremony to call in these beings. And when the beings come, they're beautiful. They look like angels or like butterflies. They kind of glow, and they just kind of like fly around, and the people are just they worship them. And when they stop playing, they kind of go back to their universe, or what, to like their part of subspace. And so the Equinox was like, wow, that's really cool. Like we want to see if we could kind of like capture one of these creatures just to like see it on our ship. So they recreate the sound of like the flute or whatever in this container, and they play it, and the beautiful alien, the beautiful butterfly aliens show up in this container, and they're like, oh, look, we caught it. Like, oh, how pretty. But now the alien starts to freak out because it can't get out. And so they're like, oh, shoot, like, what do we do? And they're trying to like figure out how to like release it, and they can't figure out how to release it. And then this beautiful like butterfly turns into that ugly like chest burster alien thing and starts like attacking the force field and trying to get out of this container. And they're like, oh, we can't get it out. And then after, being out of subspace for so long, it's kind of like a fish out of water. It can last for a little bit, but not forever. So after a couple minutes, it like just falls down dead. And they're like, oh no, like we didn't mean to hurt this species and all this other stuff. But then as they start analyzing it, they go, wait a minute, this alien is a really good fuel source. Like it's better than dilithium. Like this could get us home 10 times faster than dilithium or whatever. And they know they have a 70-year trip. So they're like, this could get us home in like 10 years. The only thing is we need a lot of these creatures. So they're kind of like, well, I mean, it's like kind of wrong, but also we don't want to be here for 70 years. So the crew is really divided. So at that point, I believe this part I might be messing up because I haven't seen this episode in a while, but I think at this point there's a mutiny where half the crew is like, no, dude, that's wrong. And the other half is like, this is what we have to do to get home. So they get rid of the half that doesn't want to go along with this plan. They build a bigger chamber. They attach it directly to their warp drive or whatever. And so they play this little harmonic sound to trap these creatures. They destroy them and turn them into fuel. So they've been doing this to get themselves home, and then until the creatures started fighting back. So the creatures started jumping in from subspace and like zapping them and taking out their crew one by one by one. And that's when Voyager finds the Equinox. And so the Equinox is like, we're being hurt. We don't know why they're attacking us, and we just need your help or whatever. So since Voyager has extended shields, the aliens start attacking Voyager as well, because they're like, you must be a part of this. Which, why would they think anything different? That's the same thing I would think. You're all guilty. You're all a part of it. I'm destroying everyone that's in this subspace region. So they're just like being constantly attacked, and they're trying to get to the bottom of it, and they're trying to see how they can block them or have, special weapons or all these things. Well, all of this comes to light at some point, I think, because someone makes their way into engineering. Plus, the crew, I mean, the captain's just like, I did what I had to do. But the rest of and the first officer too. The first officer is like, we did what we had to do. And oh, well, for those aliens, too bad for them. But everyone else on their crew, like their engineers and stuff like that, like you can tell they have so much like trauma, and like they don't want to do it, right? They're just like, it's wrong. We don't want to do it. But they took the captain's side during the mutiny because they want to get home. So now they're kind of like stuck with this side of, we have to do this thing. And that is why I picked this episode, because the crew of the Equinox said multiple times they had no choice. This was their only choice. But whenever someone says they have no choice, that someone is always wrong, because you always have a choice. They did not have a choice whether or not they could be stranded in the Delta Quadrant, but they did have a choice whether or not to torture these creatures and turn them into fuel. That was absolutely a choice. That was absolutely a choice. And it was a choice they made over and over and over again. They had a choice to try to get home a different way, like the Voyager did, but they didn't make that choice. And then they tried to use an excuse of, well, we had no choice. You had choices, right? But you chose poorly. And these are the consequences. So basically this all comes to light. And now Janeway is pissed, right? She's like, how could you ever do that? This is not the Starfleet way. This is wrong. And the captain's like, don't lecture me. I'm getting my crew home the best way I know how. And I'm not doing anything wrong. Man, well, ultimately, the creature, they break off the two ships so that the Voyager will be saved. They decide to let all the crew from the Equinox stay on Voyager, except for the captain and the first officer who's on their ship. When little creatures come, they take out the first officer right away. And we're kind of like, good, because that guy was a jerk. And then the captain is just like, you know what? I deserve this. Like, it was my decision. It was my call. It was my fault. I deserve this. And so I think he takes the Equinox maybe away from Voyager or something to separate them in the aliens' minds. And they take him out also. And then the creatures kind of turn back into beautiful butterflies, and they leave Voyager alone. And Voyager gets to go on their own way, because they're like, we don't have anything to do with this. We're not affiliated with them. And then they let that crew join their crew, but they give them a stern talking to. Janeway's basically like, we can't trust you guys. You guys are not ethical. You're not moral. You made questionable choices, but we are all stranded here in the Delta Quadrant, and we're not going to leave you here to die. So you're coming with us, right? We're not going to leave you here, but we also can't trust you for anything. You're going to have to earn our trust. When we first met you, we gave you our trust and we gave you our help, but now you're going to have to earn it. And it's just like, and they're all just like, yes, ma'am. Yes. And it's like, you're lucky she even let you stay on this ship, because just your questionable ethics could put the ship in danger in different situations, right? It's basically like having a whole, having 6 more Seskas or something. You don't know what they're going to do. But the crew was not Seska, right? They were not some like criminal masterminds or anything like that. They were just like people in a really hard situation who made a really bad choice and didn't know how to get out of it. So we never actually see these crew members ever again. We just assume they're on the ship doing very menial tasks. Obviously, they're not doing the same level of things they were doing at their old ship. They're not like running things, but their knowledge is useful to the ship. So I guess we just assume that they assimilate and do great things and help the ship get home. So yay. But I picked this episode because this is what Voyager could have been. Had they made different choices, they could have easily become this. And I'm so glad they didn't. And I really love the juxtaposition in this episode where you're like, ooh, this, like, you see the choices that they made that anyone in that position could make, the wrong choices, but they could have made those choices, and the road it leads you down, which was just utter destruction. And the other thing was like, okay, if you get home, what part of your humanity is actually getting home, right? Like, you've killed yourself through killing these creatures. And the thing, whatever's left of you that gets home, is just going to be so full of like guilt and shame and brutality and violence and just misery. It's like, that's not even you anymore, which is the argument Janeway makes, is that in trying to get the crew home, you're not even preserving what's worth preserving to get home. Such a good episode. Highly recommend. Equinox season 5, episode 25, and season 6, episode 1. It's a two-parter. Okay, I'm going to jump into the chat. Yeah, Equinox. So Nadia says Equinox was on my list. Yeah, I didn't read your list yet because I didn't want it to. So Nadia is on my email list. And we did a video. I did a video that was like the top 10 villains of Star Trek The Next Generation. And so when I saw her list, I was like, oh, she has one on her list that I didn't have on my list. So I changed my list. So this time I already had my list. So I was like, I'm going to read Nadia's email after I do this live stream. So that way I won't just be stealing your list every week, Nadia. Okay, so checking in the chat. The Cardassians are aggressive and so are the Kazon. It makes no sense that their kid won't be a total pain. Yeah, their kid's going to be, I mean, you know what? The thing is, their kid was so little. The kid was what, less than a year, still in diapers when Seska passed away and Majkala took him. Had the kid been 12 or something and had the kid been raised by Seska, that would have been the most formidable Kazon in the entire Nistrum, easily. I love that episode, how it tests the officer's integrity, which was poor. Man, I just cannot say enough times how what a bad choice that was, and how I know they felt bad, but it's they didn't feel bad enough to stop. They felt bad enough to feel bad, which to me is not that valuable, right? If you continue to hurt someone and you're like, oh, I feel really bad that I'm hurting you, but I'm going to keep hurting you. It's not the same as disciplining someone where you're kind of hurting them or hurting their feelings for their benefit. This is totally, we're hurting you for our benefit. And I feel a little bad about that, but I'm going to keep doing it. It's man, get out of here. That's why they're attacking you, and you kind of asked for that. Okay. PS2 Cypher says it reminds us that Voyager is a tough little ship. Yes, it is. Voyager had the advantage of being the first generation of anti-Borg ships. It's very powerful for its size. Yeah, Admiral Janeway had some super cool technology that she had brought back against the Borg that was so amazing. That episode, I was going to say is one of my favorites, but literally almost all the episodes are one of my favorites. But the series finale is definitely high on the list as well. I think that the Equinox crew, Nadia says, I think what the Equinox crew did was reprehensible. However, I also understand how they got that way. Their ship was never designed for long-term deep space exploration or defense. Those creatures desiccating the Starfleet crew was so creepy and so scary. And that high-pitched noise was brutal. Yeah, the noise was... the noise was eerie. It was really eerie. And when you hear it, it's just like a warning bell that death is coming to someone in this room right now. And you don't know where they're going to pop up from. So everyone pulls out their phasers and they're looking up and looking down because they just pop out of anywhere. And they're all looking around, and then it pops behind you and touches you, and they mummify, and everyone else starts shooting. I mean, it was very much like a zombie movie, but on a ship, which is worse because you can't even escape. Oof, it's rough. It was incredible to see the Starfleet crew, an idealized version of human beings, according to Gene Roddenberry, could make those choices. Yeah, so I appreciate. So in Star Trek, the original series, and then in the first 2 years of Star Trek: The Next Generation, Gene Roddenberry had a lot of creative control. It is his baby. It's his universe, and he wanted to be very utopian. He wanted Starfleet to be very utopian, and that's a whole thing. But anyways, after his creative control passed to someone else before he passed away, he passed the baton. We started to see more conflict. And so one of his things was one of the cardinal rules was no one can have conflict in the actual crew. You can have conflict with other species, but on the crew, you cannot have conflict unless somebody's lost their mind, an alien, has possessed them. A drunk virus has taken them over. It has to be, they're actually a carbon copy. That's not really them. That's the only way that conflict was allowed between crew members. But again, like I said, way back at the beginning of this live stream, drama is what makes stories interesting. So in saying we can't have drama between characters, that means we can't have any really good stories between characters either. All the drama has to happen between alien races and visitors to the ship, which is fine, and still makes for good stories, but it is limiting as a storyteller. And this particular story in Voyager, the Equinox, where we see a Starfleet crew acting very un-Starfleet, like Prime Directive, you can't be taking another creature and turning them into fuel for your ship. That's totally against the Prime Directive, right? But they were like, Prime Directive, Schmime Directive, we got to get home. and we'll take as many of these creatures as we need to do it. Imagine they would have brought that down on all of Earth. They would have brought that crazy like fight down, which is terrible. But yeah, what's interesting about that is like I fully believe that humans are humans and technology doesn't make us less human. So I appreciate that we can see Starfleet officers who aren't perfect or who aren't utopic or who don't get along with everybody equally, who aren't totally accepting and loving of the whole world, because that's not how people are. People have all kinds of biases and prejudices. People make bad choices. And what I love about Starfleet is whenever it sheds a light on like societal norms or personal choices that makes me think differently about my own life and self. I love that. So if it's just saying life is wonderful, like I can't relate to that. But if it's like, wow, you could make choice A or choice B. This one's harder for you, but this one's harder for someone else. Which one are you going to choose? And then you're like, oh, like it really makes you think about yourself, which is why I love this show. Like I love moments like that when it makes me go, oh, wait a minute. Let me think about what I'm doing. Let me think about what my choices are. Let me think about what I believe. What are my values? What's right or wrong? And I like it when it's a mirror, but it's not too preachy or judgy or like lectury, but it's just telling me a story. And it's just like, enjoy, make your own interpretations. You know, one of the things that really bothered me about Star Trek The Next Generation in the first 2 seasons was that every episode ended with a moral of the story. It drove me crazy. It was like, well, number one, I guess we ought to be nicer to other people. And I just was like, stop. Still like, if we didn't get we should be able to interpret the episode on our own. And if we come to a different conclusion, fine. But if you're saying this is that one thing we had to take from it, I just felt like it was really insulting. So I appreciate episodes like this, where it's like very clear we're not supposed to be rooting for the Equinox, but also they're not just evil. You know what I mean? They're regular people doing bad things and making bad choices. But they're not like the Cardassians or the Romulans who who are like, ah ha ha, we want to torture you. They're not like that, which makes you go, oh, like it makes the line a little more fuzzy and gray and makes it a lot more relatable. Chakotay is the heart of Voyager. So Anne says Chakotay is the heart of Voyager. Janeway would totally fuelify aliens. I cannot argue with you there. You may be right about that. Chakotay would never allow it. Tuvok would never allow it. Tom might be like, eh. Harry probably wouldn't like it, but he also wouldn't stand up against anybody to like go against it. 7 of 9 would have no problems with this. She would be like, we do this every day. We do this every day for fun. Nadia says, you hear the noise and you don't know if you or the guy next to you has 3 seconds left to live. Exactly. So creepy. Okay, PS2 Cypher says, I think a lot of interesting stories is when a team is tested where they cannot communicate, but they trust that the others will perform the way they are expected. Yes, I totally agree. When you see like one of the things I love about the Voyager crew and what I love about Picard's crew and the Enterprise is I just love like the camaraderie between and I'm talking about the bridge crew, like the senior staff. So I'm thinking of, okay, there's this episode of Voyager where maybe it's called The Void. They're in this place where it's like there's no stars and they're trying to get through and they don't know how long this stretch of space is or how long they're going to be stuck here. And they find out that there's really high radiation levels and that there's this one alien who brings all of their like trash from his planet to this part of space through a wormhole. He drops all of their toxic waste and then he goes back to their planet. So he cuts the prices down like by 100% or something by dumping all of the radiation here instead of taking it to the proper channels. So it's making him rich. So then the Voyager is like, okay, but you're killing the species that's here. And that's not cool. And they're like, so what? It's just one species. And she's like, one's enough. Look, we can give you our technology because this is what Prime Directive. We can give you our technology, which will help you refine these toxins and then reuse them and recycle them, which is what we do on our ship. So then you won't have to dump them here and you won't have to be killing this entire species. And the guy is like, no, because that's going to cost me money to redo all my ships in the fleet. I'm just going to do this. So anyways, long story short, they get into a firefight and Voyager is heading towards the wormhole. And the freighter is also heading towards a wormhole, and they're trying to destroy Voyager so they can keep their monopoly on this location and keep dumping stuff until they kill every last thing here, but saving on dumping fees or whatever. So Janeway is like, all right, I'm gonna take a shuttle because they were like, what we're going to do is we're going to collapse the wormhole. We're going to go through it so we can get out of the void, but then we're going to collapse the wormhole so that this freighter cannot keep using this passageway anymore. And she's like, we have to collapse it here on this side, though, where it's like the smallest part of the wormhole. We can't collapse it from the other side. So she says, okay, so I'm going to take a shuttle and I'm going to stay here. I want the whole Voyager to go through the wormhole to the other side to open space. I'm going to destroy the wormhole from this side, and then I'll make my way out of the, the void eventually at some point. And okay, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we were talking about that like camaraderie between the team. And so she goes to the bridge crew and she's like, all right, here's the plan. And they're like, absolutely not. No, we're not leaving you here to die. And she's like, I'll be fine. I'll have plenty of rations. I'll have a replicator in my little shuttle. And they're like, absolutely not. And she's like, what the heck? I could have you all hanged for mutiny. And they're like, try it. We're not leaving you here. We have to find another way. And so she kind of smiles and she's like, all right, options, right? And they come up with another option. But that scene also always makes me cry because it's like, this is the kind of leader I want to be, where people are like, we will not leave you. We got to find another way. We're not leaving one person behind, and we're certainly not leaving you. We're going to figure this out together. And they do. And I just love that part. And she goes to Chakotay and she's like, you must have told them. They knew what I was going to say. And he was like, well, I wouldn't be a good first officer if I didn't know. So he had talked to Tuvok, and Tuvok knew what she was up to. And Chakotay, like, they both had a sense of what she was going to do. So they told the whole senior staff, like, this is what Janeway's going to try to do. We have to stop her. And they did. They worked together to like persuade her to stay on the ship. So they decided, instead of her staying in a shuttle by herself, when they went through the wormhole, they would just shoot some torpedoes back where they just came through at the smallest part of the wormhole and just destroy it. And that would also work. So Janeway didn't have to be left alone forever. She was never going to make it to the Alpha Quadrant with that plan. She was never going to make it back to Voyager with that plan. Because it's like a 2-year journey through the void or whatever, but beautiful episode. And I love that. Like that, just teamwork, right? Because they're not all besties. Like Tuvok and Neelix are not besties. But just that idea that when the chips are down, we're here. And the other thing I love is that they all have their own area of expertise. And when they come together, it's what makes it work, right? We've got the engineering and the medical and all the different things. And Janeway apparently knows a little bit of everything, but that we have a team of experts together. I love shows like that. Like, because I always want to be one of the experts. I'm not one of the experts, but I always want to be one of the experts who's in there with like, I know this, and puts my little part to save the day. Okay, going back to the chat. Yeah, so Nadia says, like in Disaster in TNG, where they hit the quantum filament and the comms are out, and now Troy's in charge of the bridge. She has to trust the people, and that in engineering can stop the warp core overload. Right. And she's right. Everybody, and in that episode, everyone was kind of like, topsy-turvy with where they were. Picard's in the turbo lift with a bunch of kids. And like, why is he of all people with kids? And everybody was put in a different situation, but because of their expertise, because of their trust and faith in one another, they made it through, which I think that's the nice utopic spin. I was never a fan. So PS2 Cypher says, I was never a fan of Neelix, but I did appreciate his empathy. Yeah, you and many other people. Like, I will say season 1 Neelix is not my favorite, but by season 7, I was a fan of Neelix. Like, I liked everybody. But everyone I talk to nowadays is continuously not a Neelix fan, so you're not alone with that. Nadia says, I find that I like Neelix more now than I did way back then. Maybe because I'm a billion years older. Well, Nadia, I feel kind of the opposite. Like, I remember really liking Neelix. And when I rewatch it now, I'm just so creeped out by the Neelix Kess thing, which made me uncomfortable when I was a kid. I was kind of like, and I didn't really know why, but I was like, oh, this is kind of weird, but like, okay, whatever, they're together, whatever. But then watching now as an adult, I'm like, this is so creepy. It's just, and then the way he is in season 1, he's very like controlling and like belittling. And there's like episode 3, where Tom and Janeway get like sucked into the past on this planet that exploded in the past or whatever. And she's like, she has these psychic visions of the planet exploding, and she knows where Tom and Janeway are, and whatever. She tells Neelix, he's the first person she tells. She goes, I just had this dream. This planet got destroyed. I think something's going on. And he goes, oh, sweetie, it was just a dream. You just had a dream. And she's like, no, my people have psychic abilities, like powerful psychic abilities. They just didn't use them because the caretaker babied us. But we have that latent ability. And he's like, oh, that's just a myth, sweetie. No one really has those abilities. No one believes those stories. You don't have any power. So then she goes to the bridge to be like, Captain, I think something's wrong. Something bad is going to happen on this planet. And Neelix is standing next to her and goes, oh, she just had a bad dream. She just needs to go back to, he's just so like just so dismissive and belittling that, like, now it drives me crazy. Now as a grown woman, it drives me crazy. As a kid, I didn't even notice, but, anyways, that's why I think, like, I liked him more back then when I was a little more, like, unaware, and I'm, like, so much more irritated now because I'm just like, "Why are you talking to her like if she's a child?" "Oh, yeah, because she is a child." "So then why are you dating her?" "'Cause she's a child." It's just so many things. But, I do still like season 7, season 6, and, like, season 5, and I think when he's taking care of Naomi Wildman, he's so sweet. When he's with the Borg children, he's so sweet. Like, that version of Neelix, I really like. The one that's not, like, controlling and stuff, that's just like, "Let's all be happy, guys." I think he's really sweet. What was the actress's name? Um, wait, hold on a second. I missed some stuff in the chat. I was never a fan of Neelix. Billion years old. Yes, Neelix had some controlling tendencies and jealousy. Right, and he was super jealous, which is like, I get that. Like, I get it, but he was just creepy with his he was like, he was always, "Oh, what did Tom say to you, Kess? I know what he's thinking." And you're like, "Oh, dude, chill out. Like, take that up with Tom. Why are you like, why if you" yeah, I don't know. It was just like, it was a lot. Again, but when I was younger, it was like, "Mm." But now that I'm older, I'm like, "Yikes. Red flags everywhere, brudda. Red flag Neelix." Um, let's see. Kess was a super useful character. Jennifer Lean did a great job with her. It's a shame they didn't keep her when they brought on Seven. Kess would have been super helpful to Seven. Yeah, it's really cool to help Seven discover her human side. Um, so um, the actress who played Kess, when she left the show, they brought on Jerry Ryan, who's the actress who plays Seven of Nine, so that they could still have a blonde woman on the show as one of the characters. And what Nadia is saying is, like, I think it would be cool to see, like, Kess could have taught Seven about humanity. And I think, you're right, because Kess was such a empathetic person. She was, like, so caring and nurturing, and what I love about her is I love the way she cared for the doctor. Like, she always thought of him as sentient. She's the one who fought for his rights. She was always in his corner and just, like, kind of just really a support and really helpful. She was also super intelligent, right? Like, by the end of her time there, she was basically a doctor, and I love that. Um, she would have been a great teacher. I don't think Seven would have listened to her though, like, or respected her because it's Seven. Um, I do think it's really cool that the doctor ended up being the one to teach Seven of Nine about humanity because everything he knows about humanity he learned from Cass, right? So I really like that in the storytelling. I don't know if the writers, like, thought that through or if it just sort of happened as stories went along, but I really like how Cass taught the doctor how to be human and the doctor taught Seven how to be human. I just thought that was like a really neat parallel. Um, let's see. Okay. But yeah, I think every character has, like, pluses and minuses, and some characters are more my favorites than others. But like I said, by season 7, I like everybody. I'm not complaining about it. But season 1, the doctor drove me bananas, and Neelix drove me bananas. Like, I just could not deal. And also the Tuvok Chakotay tension, I was over it. Like, I was just over it. I get it. You guys don't like each other, whatever. Like, we're on a ship together. Get it together. I don't know. Something about, maybe there wasn't enough drama or too much. I don't know what it was. But the Tuvok Chakotay tension, I was just like, not, it's just beyond not interested in that. So I was glad when that kind of went away. Um, okay. So on that note, um, yeah, oh, that was sad, that episode. Yeah, on that note, I'm gonna go ahead and close off the live stream. Thank you so much to everyone who came live. Thank you to everybody who's watching on the replay. Join me next week for another Savage stream at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. So I will see you all next time. Or if it's already up, you can go watch it right now.